Hi, Tyler from Interfidelity here. Today we're going to talk about the new PSB M4U 8 noise canceling headphone with PSB's room feel equalization on it. And this is a $399 headphone. Operates wirelessly as well as wired. It's pretty nice. This headphone, I would say the styling is a little old school. It's a little clumsy maybe, but you know, it's not a particularly great looking headphone, but it's okay. Certainly the build quality is pretty nice. It's got a steel insert in the headband that makes it pretty hardy. The ear cushion, these extended yokes down here have gimbals in them to allow some movement of the headphones. They don't move a lot, but it's plenty in terms of putting it on and getting it comfortable right away. The headband and the ear pads are a synthetic leather covering that seems like it's a pretty good quality. Ear pads are memory foam. The opening on the ear pad is a little small. I would not say it's a large opening for a headphone, but fortunately there is a gap behind the ear pad back here so that the pinna of your ear goes into it behind the ear pad. So it's a little more roomy than it at first appears, but it's still a cozy fit. And that's probably okay for a traveling headphone. Noise cancelers are good for traveling, and you want a good seal, so you want a close fit around your head, and you want it to remain firmly in place. And also you're likely to be doing some movement and activity so it doesn't dislodge. I found it fairly comfortable for long listening, so it wasn't too bad for me. But if you had large ears and a large head, maybe a little tight, I did loosen it by bending the headband a little bit and giving it a little bit less caliper pressure, but it was pretty good right off the bat. So it was fine. I would say the build quality of these headphones is right on par for a $399 headphone. Very nicely built for sure. Also, it comes with some good accessories. Comes with about a 4-foot cable. The headphones can operate passively off the wire as well as wirelessly. Comes with a USB cable. This headphone for charging the headphone, but the headphone can also operate digitally from a computer, so you can plug the USB cable into the computer and run the signal digitally to the headphones, but the headphones have to be turned on and active. Unlike with the analog cable, you can run them passively on the wire without using the batteries. Comes with a nice, fairly hard side clamshell case. Of course, the ubiquitous, and I've never used one frankly, airplane adapter. I've never seen an airplane that actually uses one of those. And a 1/4 inch to 3.5 millimeter adapter, and also a spare set of ear pads, which is kind of unusual. I don't know very many headphones that I've seen come with a spare set of ear pads. They're not different than the same ear pads as on the headphone. A pretty good set of accessories for this headphone. The headphone operates basically in 3 modes. One is the passive mode, where the electronics in the headphones are not on. You just use the cable and it runs it wired up to the headphones. One is the active mode with this switch in the on position, and in this mode, if you're running it on the analog cable, it will digitize the analog signal and then run it through the digital signal processor in order to put the room feel equalization on it. The same is true in USB mode. When you turn this on, it will put the equalization on it. And of course, when you're operating wirelessly, it has to be active. The pairing switch is up here, small pairing switch to get it to pair. These headphones paired very easily, and then once paired to a device, it was lightning fast in pairing to that device subsequently. So the pairing is really nice on these headphones. I really enjoyed that. It's got a volume control, run the volume up and down. in active and noise canceling modes, if you push the volume control button once, it will run the music down to a very low level and then turn on the external microphones to the ears so that you can hear the outside world without taking the headphones off. And then of course there's a track forward, track back, pause, play, answer the phone, multifunction, switch down, set of buttons down here. All these buttons were easily accessible with your right thumb with it on your head. You easily get to them and be able to push everything up and down, knowing exactly where you're going. The headphone also operates on its batteries. It operates on two. See if I can get this cover off. Oh, there it goes. And it ran away. So it operates on two AAA sized rechargeable batteries that come with the headphone, and they're already installed in the headphone. So when you run out of battery juice, you can either just use it passively on the wire, or you can just pick up a set of a couple of AAA batteries, replace these batteries, and get back on the road without the wire. And the headphone also has a circuit that knows that it's got alkaline batteries in it, so if you do plug it in, it will sense that there are alkaline batteries in there, and it won't try to charge the batteries. So it's a nice little safety feature if you do put alkaline batteries in there. So the three modes of operation are passive, active, and active with noise canceling. The active and active with noise canceling both use the room feel EQ on it. The noise canceling circuit, although the chip that is the Qualcomm chip that this headphone runs on, has the ability to do digital noise canceling. Paul Barton decided that he didn't like the amount of latency that occurred with digital noise canceling, and so the noise canceling in this headphone is an analog circuit specially designed by PSB for these headphones, and it works quite well. In fact, one of the things about these headphones in these three modes is that they sound very similar in all three modes, or fairly similar in all three modes. Most noise cancelers that I've evaluated in the past are pretty dramatically different sounding depending on which mode you're in, and these are not like that. They're fairly similar as these things go. The sound quality in the wired mode is quite good, although there's a little bit of bass emphasis, but the bass emphasis bleeds up into the mid-range. Very typical for a sealed headphone. Very typical profile. So it's a little thick sounding, a little bit of a bloated bass in that mode, but the treble response is nice and even and smooth, even if it's a little bit overwhelmed by the bass boost. So it's kind of a warm headphone when used passively on the wire. When used in active mode, whether on the wire or digitally on the USB cable or through Bluetooth, the headphone sounds very similar in all three modes. The room feel EQ kicks in. Now, Paul Barton's room feel EQ is intended to get the headphones to sound like speakers in a room, which means there's some boundary effect bass boost below 150 hertz or so. So there's a bass boost below 150 hertz, and then it goes into the normal frequency response of the headphone, and his curve is very similar to the Harman target response. But I did find that these headphones, the peak at 3K, which is the area of your ear that's most sensitive, normally there's a peak at 3K that's fundamentally caused by the concha bowl of your ear. Kind of intensifies the sounds at those frequencies. Those frequencies are, twigs cracking and consonant sounds, vowel sounds, or not vowel sounds, but consonant sounds, speech intelligibility type range. That 3K peak on these headphones was about 5 dB too elevated. Now it's a peak, it's kind of narrow, so 5 dB is quite a bit, but it's really only over a fairly narrow range. So what I found was the EQ curve that they chose as the room field curve for this headphone has the proper shape for a Harman target response response, but it's a little bit too accentuated in the bass. Bass boost was about 7 dB, and I like about 4 dB. And the bass boost, or the boost of the peak at 3K was about 20 dB measured by me. And what I like to see is between 12 and 15 dB. So it was a little bright in that spot. So these headphones, when in active mode and the room field kicks on, has a nice warm bass response. It's a little over accentuated, but it doesn't bleed into the mids. So I wouldn't call it a bass head headphone, but bass heads would certainly like it. It wouldn't be a problem for them. The bass quality is fairly good. Not quite as textured as I'd like to hear, but it was nice and clean. So you have a strong bass, and then you have this sharp kind of peaky sound in this region, which was audible, and it remained audible as I was listening to it. My brain just didn't accommodate it away, so it was a little bright at that 3K spot when listening to music. When you switch it into noise canceling mode, the response is quite similar to the active mode with the room feel on it, but you do get a little bit of a discontinuity, a little coloration around 1 to 2K, and it sort of sounds like when a person can do a little whistle with their S's. It's just kind of a sharpish sound in there that got a little bit worse when it was in the noise canceling mode. Nonetheless, I would not call it an excessive coloration. It was there. When I compared it to the Bose Quiet Comfort 35, which is historically my favorite noise canceling headphone, I thought that the Bose Quiet Comfort was tonally more correct than this headphone. However, the Bose Quiet Comfort 35 has kind of an unnatural, sort of an artificial sound to it. It's hard to describe it. It's kind of a little squeaky, grainy sound. It's kind of like the sound of cellophane that's around flowers and fruit baskets. So it has kind of this artificial digital sound to it that is noticeable, clearly noticeable, and made it a little bit of a closer call. Even though the tonality on the Bose was better, it had this artificial character, and while these phones don't have that artificial character, they had a little bit of that sharpness. Again, that's pretty nice though. I would attribute that to PSB using an analog noise canceling circuit and doing a pretty nice job of it. So the sound did change. It did degrade the sound a little bit, but not nearly so much as many noise cancelers do. So it was kind of a close call in terms of listening to music, but I thought the Bose Quiet Comfort 35 was a little more tonally accurate, and I thought this one was a little sharp. But when I went to watching movies and television shows, it was quite a different story, because this sort of accentuated response curve with a little bit more bass than you should have and a little bit more of that 3K speech intelligibility presence stuff. What happened is that with movies, the speech intelligibility was fantastic, and also that heavy, that weighty bass kind of carried the modulation of the voices and the pace and the voices. So and even at a fairly low level, everything remained very intelligible. I mean, basically what happened was I totally forgot about the sound and just got into the movie and was listening, and I kind of had to sort of pull myself back away from it and to realize, man, I'm absolutely having no problems at all with the speech intelligibility on these movies at a fairly low volume level, and when I switched to the Bose, they were not as intelligible as these headphones were, and by a decent margin. These headphones were very, very good when it comes to speech intelligibility on movies. So that was kind of a really nice surprise, and kind of a wake-up call to me, because I wasn't really expecting that I would think neutral is always best, and it's not necessarily the case. Some of these characteristics of this headphone anyway made it particularly usable when watching movies. So the sound quality is good, not great by having this peak in terms of music listening, but in terms of movie and telephone calls as well, it was absolutely fabulous. So it's going to end up on the Wall of Fame. I still think the Bose is the better headphone for me anyway. But for those of you out there who do a lot of movie and movie listening as well as music listening, but do a lot of television and movie listening on headphones, I think you'll find these are really a treat. Also, it's probably a good headphone for older folks like me, who's beginning to have hearing problems. My hearing isn't what it used to be, and when I test, I can see that it isn't as good as it used to be. And this would be a great headphone. Probably 5 more years for me, but this headphone might be preferred over the Bose. At any rate, so for older folks who are a little hard of hearing, I would recommend this even as a music listening headphone, because it'll give you a little extra oomph where your old ears need. So the PSB M4U 8 for $399 is going up on the Wall of Fame as a real solid competitor to the Bose headphone. And I've got to tell you, NAD, which is a sister company to PSB, is producing a NAD Viso HP70 headphone. I think it's going to go for $349. That's based on the same chip, same electronics, same noise canceling circuit. And I'm really curious to see that headphone, because if it's a little bit dialed back in the presence area, it may bump both the Bose and this headphone back off the Wall of Fame when it comes out in a couple of months. We'll have to see about that. I'm certainly excited. I certainly like the NAD Viso HP50 headphone, so it's going to be interesting to see what that 70 is like when it comes out. All right, PSB M4U8, Wall of Fame bound. Very, very good headphone for portable use, movie listening, and then the music. It's good, but it's got a little bit of a bright spot in there. So I suppose I should mention that before I wrap this up. One of the reasons I think that this difference exists between a good movie headphone and a good music headphone is that while I used to think it used to be neutral that was the desired characteristic, and neutral was the same everywhere, I think what happens with movies is two things. One is that the speech on movies usually comes from the center channel, so it's physically separated from the side channels, and your brain can kind of tune into it using that cocktail effect. You'll have to look that one up if you want an explanation, but can use the cocktail effect to zoom in on the sound of the voices. So intelligibility with a center channel is probably better than intelligibility on a headphone where the center channel is sharing itself with the side channels. And also, of course, when you're out on the road and you're on an airplane or whatever, you've got extra noise around you. The noise cancelers get rid of a lot of low frequency noise, but high frequency noise still gets through, and that can confuse speech intelligibility. And I think that's another reason why this headphone with just a little bit of extra in that presence region is able to cut through any external noise like that. So the more I think about it, the more I think that in the long run, headphones should probably have a switch to go between music and movies, and in the movie mode it has a little bit more presence and maybe even a little bit more bass boost than you would want with music. We'll see how that pans out over time. All right, we'll see you guys the next time.